Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids' teachers, their librarians, their principal, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Ghana, Himalaya, wherever you find your podcast. We want to invite all the authors and aspiring authors who are listening to the podcast to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Please be sure to click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to discover how we can help you celebrate your book with the entire world. Now, you know, if you are an author, especially an independent or self-published author, you probably had no idea that when you were writing your book and getting it published, you had no idea that once that book was published, that you became the CEO of a small business, your book business. Yeah, it is. It's a business now. And you had no idea that there are literally thousands of books published every single... You thought I was going to say year. No. There are thousands of books published every single month. It is so hard for a book to stand out in that crowd, especially an independent or sub-published book. But we would love to help you do that. If you visit readingwithyourkids.com and click on that Authors Click Here button, you will discover how you can be a guest here on the podcast. Being a guest gives you the chance to tell the world all about your book. It's fun, it's easy, and it doesn't cost you a thing. You can also learn about our Certified Great Read program. This is a program that has helped so many authors. You can also discover our monthly promotion program. We're really excited. We've helped so many authors to date, and we would love to help you. Please go to readingwithyourkids.com, click on that Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, and discover how we can help you celebrate your book with the world. Join us right now from the beautiful state of North Carolina. Our guest is here today to celebrate her beautiful picture book. It's called Lucy Lemon and the Brave Bubbles. Please welcome to the show, Veronica DeStefano. Hey, Veronica, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm excited to talk to you about the Brave Bubbles. What makes these bubbles so brave?
So what makes this so awesome is this story is actually written about my youngest daughter, Lucy. When she was 4 years old, she was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder called Selective Mutism. And for a while, she was pretty misunderstood. She was thought of as rude, kind of a standoffish child, but it was actually this disorder. It's a severe social anxiety disorder. It was really sort of confusing for us because at home she was, you know, your normal outgoing, bubbly child, but at school she'd completely shut down and wouldn't be able to talk to her teachers or peers or anything. And it wasn't until 4 that she got diagnosed with this disorder. And as she progressed through school and things like that, she had a special ed team and a speech therapist that would work with her on a daily basis to try to help her be able to communicate. And that is sort of where these brave bubbles came into existence. Lucy and her special ed teacher came up with this idea of bubbles, sort of taking deep breaths to create these bubbles before the start of each day, and popping them along the way throughout her day. Simple things of like just walking into school was tough for her, so she would pop a little bubble each time she'd walk in, and that was her way of almost encouraging herself to keep going and to keep trying to pop her bubbles no matter how big or how small her accomplishment was with her anxiety. And one day after school, I asked her, I'm like, Lucy, how many bubbles do you pop today? And she told me some crazy kid number, like 100 million bubbles, you know. And she goes, Mom, do you know what's inside my bubbles when I pop them? And I said, what's inside the bubbles, Lucy? And she says, purple and pink glitter. And it falls on me, and I sparkle every time I do something brave. And I thought to myself, well, that'd be a really cute story to tell about how Lucy, who's struggling with her anxiety and has these brave bubbles that make her sparkle with confidence, and would also maybe help other children and teachers and parents understand her situation a little bit better as well.
You know, that is fascinating. First off, I'm so delighted for your Lucy and want to compliment her team of teachers and educators that they were able to come up with such a unique and obviously pretty effective way for Lucy to deal with some of her anxiety. Selective mutism is something I've experienced, not myself personally, but have experienced at least once. My daughter, she was in a really special group of kids. You know, there were classes, and there are some classes that are just miserable. You just go in there, and it's like, ugh, these kids, there are other kids that are just beautiful, and they're so supportive of each other. And that was my daughter's class. But there was one kid in her class who I'm going to guess was dealing with selective mutism, because just as you explained, at school, she would not talk at all. And I know myself, I would reach out to her and intentionally try to help her feel comfortable and try to get her to talk, and nothing. And meanwhile, her parents are like, I don't get it. At home, she never shuts up. And, you know, so I don't know if the family had received a diagnosis of selective mutism. We're talking about 15 years ago.
Sure.
But it's really, it was painful for all of the kids in that class, and that they all really tried hard to make this young woman feel comfortable. Yeah. And they got frustrated because no one sat down with them and said, hey, this is a kind of a neurodiverse thing, and she's really not in control of it. To the point where probably by the end of the school year, the kids were just kind of like, they're not even trying anymore. You know, they weren't mean to her, but
they gave
like
up on her. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really happy that we're talking about this today, because you know, we're closing in on 1,900 episodes, and I think this is the first time we've talked about selective mutism.
Yay!
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, and like you said, kids don't understand unless they've been explained to it. About it. And I think this book too, because it was read to all her classmates and stuff, and it finally clicked. They're like, oh, that's just Lucy. She's not mad at us. She's not being mean because she can't say hi or answer our question. And it's really helped Lucy make friends, because instead of kids walking away from her when she wouldn't talk, or like in your instance, giving up on her, they're like, oh, this is just Lucy. We're just going to pull her in and have her play with us. And that helped her build her confidence and her friendships as well.
Yeah. Is there any, you know, I mentioned that this falls under the neurodiverse kind of umbrella, and I kind of took a chance doing that because it wasn't positive, but it is something that's in that neurodiverse umbrella, and do we know what's going on? Are we able to say this is causing it, or what more do we know?
I don't think it's it's not trauma related. It's not. I don't think it's anything that we could have done to prevent it. It might have honestly been a little bit hereditary, because while my daughter was going through therapies and doctor's appointments and things like that, I realized that I potentially had this as a child as well, undiagnosed. Because again, I was like back in the 80s, 90s, and that wasn't a thing. But, you know, it's it's just everyone has different levels of anxiety, and it's how her body responds. The fight or flight, she just freezes up, and she wants to talk so bad. She like told us at home, I want to talk, but it's just her body will physically not let her. So it's a lot of work. We've been working since she was 4. She still has a speech therapist. She still has a special ed team that comes in, and it's a lot of exposure therapy, just exposing yourself continuously to public speaking or initiating conversation with people. But I don't know if there's an actual real cause for it, as more it's just how she was wired, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do know that, and I've heard it said very often, that public speaking is the thing that is most terrifying for a huge percentage of the population. Yeah. And it's funny because there was a time in my life where I had a really hard time getting up and speaking in front of people. And now I've been making a living for 35 years doing presentations in front of kids, audiences from 50 kids to 10,000. And I don't think of it anymore. It's really easy to get out there.
Yeah. It's an exposure therapy.
It probably is. It probably is. So is this something that we're hoping that Lucy is going to be able to get over, isn't the word, but find solutions for, or find ways to enable her to be more comfortable speaking to others?
Yes, and it's one of those things we have to work at daily. I don't think she'll ever be healed or fixed. There might always be something that would trigger that type of response from her, but she has made drastic improvements, and she's 9.5 now, so she's made some big improvements. She just recently was able to get up in front of her class and do a speech by herself, which is something that would have never happened 4 years ago. She's on a competitive cheer team now, and she's one of the flyers, and you see her with this big smile on her face, something like drawing that much attention to herself, something that would have never happened a couple years ago. So there are baby steps that we're making and improvements that we're seeing. I think it's always going to be a lifelong work for her, depending on what situation she's in. So, I mean, we're just happy with what we've seen so far, and I think her little brave bubbles have really made a big difference, and we're hoping with this series to kind of help other kids, not necessarily with just selective mutism, but maybe any other anxieties in general, find a way to cope.
Yeah, we're learning so much more. I'm curious because I'm almost 100 years old, so, I don't know if anxiety had been invented when I was a kid, but we certainly didn't hear about kids suffering from anxiety. And even, when I graduated from college and was working in human services, anxiety, maybe you heard it once in a great while, but now it's something that we're hearing a lot of, and we're finding out that lots of kids are dealing with anxiety, in addition to lots of adults. Do we have an idea? Have kids always had to deal with anxiety and it just was going undiagnosed, or do you think that there might be something that's causing more and more kids to have to deal with this?
That's a good question. I feel like maybe kids for hundreds of years have had anxiety, but it's always been approached differently. I think luckily for kids now, we're in a world that's open to discussing mental health, where I feel like even my generation or my parents' generation before, mental health was not up for discussion. It was just, you're fine, things like that. Where kids now, there's adults that understand this is a real thing. It can happen to kids. It can happen to adults. And I think the world's changed a lot too. We're more busy and there's always stuff coming at us. And I think that heightens your anxiety as well. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point. Yeah. We are in a much faster paced society. We're exposed to more and more information. Information is coming at us at light, literally at light speed. And I'm imagining that probably human beings were never really wired to have to deal with so much information coming in that quickly.
I agree.
Yeah. It's interesting when you think about this that your daughter suffered from this anxiety everywhere except at home. Isn't it wonderful that she felt really comfortable at home where she was able to speak?
It is. And I think that's why it was so hard for us at first to understand why this was such a problem at school, because she'd be putting on shows with her sister and laughing and talking and carrying on. And then she'd get to school and the teachers would hand me a stack of papers and say we couldn't do her preschool assessments because she wouldn't tell us what she knows. I'm like, what do you mean she wouldn't tell us what she knows? So I would have to take them home, and of course we'd blow right through them. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to understand that, and that's, I think, where the whole selective thing comes from. And selective, I don't really like that word because it makes it seem like it's a choice. Mm-hmm. It's not a choice. I think situational mutism would have probably been better fitting, because depending on her situation is when her body decided to freeze up. Mm-hmm. She wasn't making a choice to do that. She was physically unable to speak in certain situations. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think situational is a much more accurate label, if you will, for what Lucy was dealing with. How excited or what's Lucy's feeling now that her story is being shared with kids all over the world through your book?
Oh my goodness, she loves it. So all of her friends still call her Lucy Lemon at school, and she carries a lemon backpack to school. Like, she's kind of just made it this whole personality for her. But so, like, I'm part of selective mutism groups, and I've spoken at summits for selective mutism, and she's gotten little letters from kids across the country who also have selective mutism, and they write letters back and forth encouraging each other. And I think it's just built this community for her that she wouldn't have had without this book and people finally understanding why she was this way.
Yeah. Well, Lucy Lemon and the Brave Bubbles, it's one of a series of 3 books. There's 2 story books and an activity book. Can you tell us the other titles?
So the activity book is Lucy Lemon's Brave Bubble Activity Book. It's got a couple coloring pages with, positive affirmations, coloring what's inside your bubble, and things like that. But then it's also in the back got tips and resources for parents and teachers, like how you can help your child or how you can help a student who you think might have this disorder. It's got a list of music. Lucy has this playlist of music that she used to listen to on the way to school to kind of pump her up for her day and get her ready. So it's all kind of fun games and activities to boost their confidence and to help their inner group of people help them with their anxiety throughout the day and get them the help they need as well.
Yeah, yeah. And what was the other story name?
And the other one is Lucy Lemon's Brave Bubble Pop. And this is sort of a resource for teachers, speech therapists, or like some kids with selective mutism, they have trouble speaking to certain family members. Like, everyone's selective mutism kind of looks differently. So I came up with this idea of popping bubbles with Lucy. So it's pages, and different pages have bubbles on them. And each bubble has a yes or no response, a forced choice question, or an open-ended question. So the person reading can ask, do you like the red bird or the blue bird? And the child would answer red. And you could just pop a bubble with Lucy. Or if the child's not ready to answer an open-ended question, you could do yes or no questions. And any type of response, like a yes or a no, nonverbal communication would count as popping a bubble. And it's kind of a fun way to get them to communicate without a lot of pressure on them through reading a story and sitting and being comfortable on the couch or being comfortable at school or wherever they are. So that was a resource I came up with more for the people who know a child with selective mutism.
And where are we at with our understanding of it? Obviously, it's something we're hopefully understanding more and more. Is this something that most educators are becoming aware of, or do we still have a long way to go to get the message out there that this is an issue that a lot of kids might be dealing with, and knowing that is going to help a lot more kids?
I think we still have a little ways to go, because it is hard to find a specialist or a therapist in the area that can help Lucy. We got pretty lucky with the school that we're at. They did have experience with a selective mutism child, and there are some that came after her as well that had been diagnosed with selective mutism, and they were able to implement what they learned from Lucy with these children as well. But I do think we have a ways to go, because I feel like we kind of are the exception, not the norm. From what I've seen on moms groups and our selective mutism group, it's really hard to find people that understand this disorder at schools, and it's really hard to find therapists that can diagnose these disorders. But these parents know that this exists, and unfortunately, a lot of these quiet selective mute kids kind of get pushed to the back in school because they don't cause any problems. They just don't speak. So as long as they're getting their work done or whatever, they just kind of get pushed to the side. And so I think in that regard, we do have a long way to go in helping these kids become functional members of their classroom or family or whatever it is.
You know, what you just said was so true. As long as the kid's getting their work done, they're not causing trouble. They're just we don't even notice them, and that's. I think that's a problem that is facing lots of kids, and it's a real kind of I don't know, failures. It is. It's a failure of our education system, and it's not teachers' fault. It's it's just that schools are not set up to really get to know every kid individually. I think it would be ideal. I'm sure your daughter has an individual education plan at this point in her career. I think every kid should have an individual education plan. Someone sitting down and going, oh, I know Tommy is really good and he loves sports and everything else bores him. But so if we get him a book about sports, he's probably going to sit down and read, and we can talk to him about math through that and all that kind of stuff. And I think kids would be much better served if we get to that
100%.
point.
Yeah, and I feel like some of these kids, they just get brushed off as shy kids. And but there's a line, as my pediatrician told me when I confronted her about Lucy being really quiet and not speaking in class. I was like, she's just really shy. And she said, well, how long has she not been speaking in class? And I was like, well, it's been a full year. And she kind of just gave me this look like that goes well beyond shyness. If they never warm up, it like a month, probably kids should warm up and be able to talk to their teachers and peers or whatever. But if it's gone on a year, like that's not shy anymore. And we shouldn't brush those kids off as just being shy. There might be honestly something wrong, and the earlier interventions we can get and the earlier help and therapies we can get for them, the better off they'll be in the future.
Absolutely. Where can people go? We're going to ask people to go and tell people where they can go to your website or to find out specifically about Lucy Lemon and the Brave Bubbles. But are there support groups? If you think that your child is or a friend's child is dealing with this, is there a place where we can go to get some more information to give to our teachers and their counselors so that hopefully these kids can get the help they need as early as possible?
So there are a couple organizations. There's the Child Mind Institute, where you can go on there and you can search selective mutism. Kurt Psychology is another one that specializes in selective mutism disorder. And then smhelp.org, I believe, is another one that has all these different resources. You can look at the symptoms. You can even have a teacher checklist or a teacher page where you can print off that explains, like, this is what my child's going through. This is how you can help them. And then the process of getting them those IEPs and things that they need to be successful in school.
Yeah. So important. And what a difference it can make in a kid's life when they get the right help.
Yes, huge difference.
Yeah. Do you plan on writing more of Lucy's adventures?
You know, we've talked about it. Lucy loves her books, but so I would like to write more in the future, especially as she gets older and maybe has new fears or anxieties to overcome. But you know, like I can't write a book about one kid without writing about the rest of them. So I do have to write about my other kids too, and share their stories as well. But I do hope to get back to some Lucy Lemon because I do feel like it made a big difference in the selective mutism community.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully Lucy Lemon and the Brave Bubbles would be part of that resource page that we were just speaking about. In the meantime, where can people go to find out more about Lucy Lemon and find out more about you?
So you can find all of these on Amazon, or you can also find me on Facebook. Story to Tell Author is my handle. And then on Instagram, I'm at It's V DeStefano. And I have the links to all those as well.
We've had a really fascinating time speaking to the author of Lucy Lemon and the Brave Bubble. She's also Lucy Lemon's mom. Our guest has been Veronica DeStefano. Veronica, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We are so grateful that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. We'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/Reading with Your Kids, at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. If you are on LinkedIn, please connect with Jed Doherty. We also have a Reading with Your Kids page on LinkedIn. We would love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Authors, click on the Authors Click Here button to find out how you can be a guest here on the show and find out how we can help you celebrate your book with the world. And also, parents, please be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com to download our free online magazine. Hey, we want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our amazing guest. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Ann O'Leary, Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
What?